It's the CHGO Fire Podcast presented by PointsBet. Sign up now using code CHGO to get 2 bets risk-free up to $2,000. I'm Pat. He's Alex. And it's not, I guess it's a sad day in the Fire world, but it was also kind of an inevitable day in the Fire world. They have not qualified for the playoffs yet again.
Fire have still not qualified for the postseason since 2017. They have not qualified in 11 out of the last 13 years, and in a league with enforced parity where half the teams make the playoffs, and at many stages over that stretch, more than half the teams make the playoffs. It's real bad.
Real bad.
Not great, Bob.
Not great.
It looks like Cincinnati's going to make the playoffs. So of the teams that, were actually around for the last 3 years, the only one during Heitz's era that has missed the playoffs all 3 years other than the Fire is Houston. Not a good look for a GM and that has basically unlimited cash to spend from an owner who's very, very invested in trying to make this work. It is not working pretty clearly. So, and what was really disappointing was, if you'll recall, Alex, there was a game over the summer against Columbus in which the Fire held a 2-0 lead going into the half and then lost 3-2. And at that point, we said they're dead. This team is not going to make the playoffs. And then they basically went on a little bit of a winning streak, and they're like, made us question ourselves. No, we were right.
No, this is the team we thought it was.
Because they did the same thing again against Charlotte.
Exact same thing. And, it's one of those things, I think I tweeted early in the Charlotte game when the Fire were up 1-0, are we about to have another nonsense Fire-Charlotte game? And yes, we were, except this one was very familiar in not a fun way. I guess we do have to give a little credit.
It was entertaining. It just wasn't enjoyable.
Yeah.
But I would watch these two teams play every week.
Yeah.
Because there's fighting and scoring and lead
Brant
changes.
Bronico, former Fire midfielder, tried to start a fight with Fede Navarro and John Duran in the middle of this game, which, hey, I admire his determination. I'm not sure that's a wise fight for him to be picking, but Brant seems like a guy who can scrap, so
he'll throw down. BB will throw down, I think. Yeah.
I guess we should at least mention, John Duran scored again. Chris Mueller really wanted that ball, but a really nice finish from Duran, who was rounding into form. It was always nice to see people who aren't Fire invested compliment something. I think the standout one was Brian Sciaretta from, I think he's Soccer America, American Soccer Analysis. He shows up a lot of places, saying he thought Duran might be the best young player in the league from a talent perspective, which is ridiculously high praise. I mean, Duran did not make the MLS 22 that came out today, and maybe his surge this year was a little late for the voting in that. And he's also just not really a sexy name in terms of players who, are going to get you clicks on social. And the Fire are a bad team, and you really can't justify giving them more than one inclusion in such a list when Gaga was always going to be an obvious inclusion in an award like that. So Duran, though, you speculated, Pat, that there could be teams circling and watching for this offseason rather than waiting for the scheduled plan of Duran works his way in year 1, Duran becomes a star in year 2. It would be fun to see John Duran become a star in year 2 next year for the Fire. But you can understand, given his obvious talents and given the position of the club, if several parties might want to move that along sooner.
Yeah, I think if the right clubs start calling and the right offers are made, Duran's going to want to go. I think rightfully so.
We already kind of know he's not a big fan of MLS.
He might be better off staying for another season, depending on, we would have to know what the situation is, that the hypothetical place he's going before we can actually compare the two. But, he's been one of the bright spots in an otherwise dismal season. And I do wonder if things would have been different if Ezra didn't feel his hands were tied in starting Kasper Shibilko for so long. And maybe the Fire don't bring in Shibilko at all, and they just throw John Duran out there to start the season. It would have been
with Chino Ofor
wild
as backup.
Yeah, God, I can't even,
Yeah, we'll talk more about Duran later because the what if. It's been a few weeks of this now, but the what if for me remains: if that front four had been the starting front four for longer than the last 4 weeks, that being Duran, Mueller, Shaqiri, Gutierrez.
Yeah.
The Fire, I don't know if they make the playoffs, but they are a better team if that's the front four most of the year, rather than chopping and changing and trying to fit square pegs in round holes.
There's also the sort of like the Duran Shabilko thing. There was also the Gutierrez Jairo Torres thing where we're all looking and going, no, Guti's better.
Because Guti had been starting before Jairo showed up, and then they got Jairo fit, and then they tried to incorporate Jairo in, and it clearly wasn't working after 2 weeks. They did it for like 5 more games, and then finally went back to Guti, and things got better.
Jairo Torres was so bad this season, and maybe it was driven by those injuries, but he was so ineffective this season, I would have preferred they kept Nacho Aliceta in that DP slot.
Yeah. No, because at least Nacho would have had familiarity with the team.
Yeah.
Nacho ran more. His work rate's higher. He kind of has the same positional flexibility that Jairo brings. You traded one guy for another, and it doesn't look like you've accomplished a whole lot. Again, I think you have to give Torres a second season, given all the extenuating circumstances. I don't think you have much of a choice there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it may be that, those hip injuries that he was dealing with were worse than we thought. Obviously, the Fire were very concerned. I don't understand how with two different people, with Shabilko and then with Torres, there was a player who got here with a chronic injury that they didn't really seem to know about before that player got here. I don't know who to place blame or if there's anyone to place blame on there. I don't really understand, but I do know that's a bad thing that happened twice.
Right, and the difference also, Jairo was kind of constant like that. Shabilko got some sort of magic elixir for like 2 games in the middle there, looked amazing, and then went right back to looking totally broken. So that's even less explainable amid all of the confusion.
I don't have a sense of what exactly has happened, but like I said, it's to have that happen with 2 different players that you just paid a lot of money for. Not good.
Not good. So, you've been pretty strong about Georg Heitz, and I've pretty much agreed with you all the way for a while now.
Yeah.
The idea that Heitz and Pelzer need to go is not a new one. The concern that is growing for me, and I've expressed this a little bit, is with Ezra Hendrickson. I've expressed a couple times I don't like some of these lineups with choices. The subbing patterns seem not great. And this game was just like a cherry on top of all of those problems together. Because on the bright side, while I enjoyed, we saw more of the young faces. Victor Becerra gets into this game. Mm-hmm. Kendall Burks starts because the Fire have a bit of a center back injury crisis.
They had to, basically,
at the moment. And Burks ends up getting caught on a goal with Kirill Swiderski sneaking in over his shoulder. It's a rookie mistake, kind of to a T. But then down the stretch of this game, Andre Reynolds in for Xherdan Shaqiri in the 89th minute. The Fire still cannot hold a lead.
I think that sub was down to Shaq asking to come out of the game, is what Ezra said again. So,
but there's kind of where I think you've got to have the buck stop somewhere.
No, stay in the damn game.
Xherdan Shaqiri saying, with a half hour left, saying in the 60th minute, he's like, something's pulling, I can't keep going. We might not like that, but I think that's one thing. Xherdan Shaqiri in a tie game in the 89th minute saying he's done. No, if you're the manager, if you are supposed to be the guy with the authority, you have to be able to say, no, you're going to stay out there for the last 7-8 minutes, whatever it is, because we need to win this game. And if we don't, it doesn't matter anyway.
Does he have no personal pride or no stake in this team that he wouldn't go, I'm our best option to score. I hurt, but we need to win this game?
No.
I don't think he has that at all.
No, I mean, I think it's been a World Cup training exercise the whole time. I think that's been pretty consistent.
It's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating.
It can be infuriating, but at some point, whether it's Ezra's fault, quote unquote, might not be important here. But if the manager doesn't actually hold the authority to dictate who is playing when, what is the point of him being the manager?
I have been softer on Ezra, obviously, than Heitz. Part of that is because
time.
Yeah, time is a big one. Part of that is because I think because I am a youth coach, I tend to go easier on coaches from a media standpoint that I think are doing mostly the right things. I was easier on Wiki than I probably should have been, and I've been easier on Heitz. I've asked friends about this. Am I going too easy on Ezra? I personally like Ezra. We get along. Like, I think he's a smart guy.
That hire. He's a nice guy. Like, he's a nice person.
And I think maybe I am. I think maybe you're right. You know, some of this has to come down to put some blame on Ezra's shoulders. And I think Ezra, the little bit I know him, would say the same thing.
Oh yeah, he's
That's
not going to
like
BS you. He's not. He's. It's just. It's been so repeated at this point. Just the subbing, the lineups, the team's inability to see how to lead.
They only play the 4-2-3-1 with one exception this season.
Yeah, there's no tactical flexibility because the long and the short of it is, Ezra was overdue for a chance to get a top job in MLS. The successes he had, his length of experience as a top assistant in this league, the really good things a lot of really top coaches had to say about him as a coach, he was overdue to get this shot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes guys who are deserving of the shot, maybe their best role is as that number 2 guy. Now, Ezra could go on to have a very successful management career with the Fire elsewhere. My position at this point is I think the right move is to get a new sporting director in, to get rid of Heitz, and then whoever that new person is has to be given the autonomy of the decision whether or not to keep Ezra.
I wrote that this week on the website, or I guess late last week, and I completely agree. Yeah, I said this to a friend yesterday. If Heitz fires Ezra and says, I gave him a good roster and it was his fault, if he does that, I'm going to flip out.
Yeah, because I think if they both go, the order, it has to be in the other order.
Yeah.
It has to be Heitz gets fired, new guy comes in, sees the same things we're seeing, and makes the decision. That plus I want someone who's going to play specific style or who shares an ethos, and maybe Ezra and the new person do not share said ethos. Whatever the reasoning is.
Fine. Fair. But like to fire Ezra because then it becomes, well, who hired Ezra? Who hired Wiki? Who picked these players? And after Wiki, Heitz was going out of his way to go, well, I included Wiki in the player decision because he knew that Wiki was saying privately, this roster sucks. What am I supposed to do with it? So he went out of his way to go,
Top of the table, Rafa Wiki in Switzerland.
It's like, because Heitz is very it's not just me, remember, when, which bugs the shit out of me. Like when I asked him in the news conference, grade your performance. What have you done well? I asked the same question of Ezra a couple weeks before. Ezra gave me this lengthy answer with a lot of reflection. Heitz said, it's not my job to judge my performance.
The concern then...
So I made it my job to do it.
Yeah, because the concern there is, and we've kind of touched on this, is the Fire are going to do a U.S. Soccer, and they're going to promote Heitz out of his current job into some kind of overseer of... Joe Mansueto Soccer Incorporated, if we want to call it that. Yeah. And then hire somebody to be the GM/sporting director of the Fire specifically, and then there would be somebody else hired specifically to handle Lugano.
Yeah.
And then if they ever bought more clubs, there would be individual people under Heitz. But you can't really feel good if you're Mansueto about a larger sporting project if you're going to then hand the keys to Heitz for the whole thing after kind of a lousy return on the smaller scale.
And we got to do the break in a second, but I just want to make this point before we do. I have heard that the Fire aren't done with Lugano. They want another club in somewhere else. They're trying to really build a network of clubs like City did or Red Bull or whatever, to give them that flexibility to move players around the world.
And clubs, surprisingly, if you're an American sports fan, soccer clubs, shockingly cheap.
If Ryan Reynolds and Rob found that out with Wrexham. That's a great show, by the way. Great show, Lawrence. You watch it?
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I got to get around to it. No, but you can get this is a lot of money, and I don't mean to say that, but you can get a lower half of the table Premier League team for $50 million. It doesn't make any sense.
So my big question on Heitz is
hold on. I think that has partially to do with the potential of getting dropped, right?
Oh, no, it's the relegation potential, but in just terms of the value of the asset, it's just ridiculous to me to see MLS teams valued at 400,
Right, but
500, 600.
there's no risk to owning an MLS team. If you
No, there is no risk. But again, the TV money, though, like it would take how many years of MLS play would you have to get the TV money you get from 1 year in England? It's just.
But if you end up getting relegated, then where does that TV money go? It's gone.
All right, it's just an unbelievable investment opportunity if you're willing to put the money in to make the team better.
You're upside down on your investment. I'm no real estate or
All I'm saying is
guy.
Saudi Arabia should have had to pay a lot more money for Newcastle.
Well,
I digress.
Yeah.
So my question on Heitz is not should he. We've I think established that. The question is will he? Is he too tied in to all of the dealings with Lugano, with the Fire, with any potential new team that Joe might want to buy? Is he too in the mud to actually remove him and get him out? I don't think that he'll be fired.
I don't either. I mean, if I had to bet on it, maybe his job title changes. I do not.
I think it might be something like that.
I think
I
that's
have
very
no
possible.
insider information on this, but that is my gut feeling on this, that I don't think he's going to be gone completely.
Also, before we hit the break, we got to acknowledge an early comment in the chat. Alex Calabrese.
Alex, they did you bad.
Yeah,
they did you dirty.
Coming in from Syracuse, New York. Alex's tweet about the Fire getting eliminated from the playoffs was chosen by Charlotte FC to put in a TikTok dunking on Jordan Shaqiri, saying that the Fire deserved to be in the playoffs more because they have a long history and Charlotte don't. So Alex caught a bit of a stray there.
Sorry,
Credit
Alex.
to the Charlotte people for being creative. The Fire kind of walked right into that one.
Yeah, sorry, Alex.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Sorry.
All right, Alex. This football season, PointsBet is bringing you a better way to bet live on games.
Also, the other football, we should clarify.
Yes. That's very true. Unique to our show and the Red Star show that we would need to even say that.
Yeah.
Which means before this ad is over, Alex, you can place a live same-game parlay, bet on the next drive to be a touchdown, and cash out on your live second-half over bet. With PointsBet, you have access to more live football markets than ever before. Build the perfect live same-game parlay by combining your favorite bets anytime during the game, including spreads, totals, player props, and more. Choose the outcome of the next drive and next points with PointsBet Lightning Bets. So whether you're on the move or on the couch, do it live on PointsBet. Download the PointsBet app today and sign up with code CHGO to get your 2 bets risk-free up to $2,000. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
Also, a very exciting new sponsor, newish sponsor now around here at CHGO, is Game Time.
I like this one.
Game Time is the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever before to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, stand-up comedy, literally anything you can think of that you would need to buy tickets for. Have you ever dreamed of sitting in a seat you never thought you could, on the 50-yard line, courtside, behind home plate at a Sox or Cubs game, floor seats at a concert? Game Time helps make that possible.
Yeah.
They've got the biggest last-minute price drops, and they can be found on seats you never thought you'd be able to find or afford. You won't find a better deal this season if you wanted to see one of the Fire's final games, although that seems a little less appealing. Red Stars have a really big game again coming up against Angel City out in Bridgeview that could be a playoff decider. The Bears feel similar to the Fire in some ways in terms of the emotions of watching them play live. The White Sox are making a late playoff push here. So there are other things that you can go and check out using Game Time.
I would say
as Lawrence dials up SeatGeek Stadium here.
He's pulling up SeatGeek for the Revolution game. You get to see, what the view
$16.
is.
$16, pretty cool.
There's also this Leon friendly that we should point out the Fire aren't hosting it. It's just at their stadium. But Leon's actually running the show on that one, so the tickets are.
Bridgeview's kind of become a CONCACAF catch-all. Canada's played there.
Yeah,
a lot of Mexican teams have played there.
That's a tough
I like
one
that
to
very
say.
much.
It's just kind of a spot they like playing games. Anyway, if you love CHGO, you'll love Game Time. It's one of the best ways to support us is by buying tickets through the link in the show description, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, watching live right now on YouTube. It is in the description below. So join over 15 million people who have downloaded the Game Time app and score the best seats to all your favorite events.
Red Stars, Angel City.
I like the look of that. That's going to be a big game.
$22.
I really
on the
like
one
way
hand,
that,
it would be exciting as an atmosphere if it was a big game. On the other hand, from a Red Stars perspective, I'm hoping it is totally meaningless and that they have already qualified for the playoffs by the time that game happens. Pat, we've talked a bit this year about like possible alternatives if we got our wish.
Yep.
To Georg Heitz being fired. We've mentioned his name before. The biggest name on the market in American soccer.
Party on Garth.
Front office. Garth Lagerwey, soon to be, as we believe, will be leaving the Seattle Sounders at the end of the year. Again, this is not confirmed yet. His contract is up. No extension has been announced. The Sounders are about to miss the playoffs for the first time ever. In their MLS existence, which, again, also means the first time since Garth has been in that job. I don't know if the Fire are necessarily the best candidate, but they have to be putting themselves in the conversation, I would think. Atlanta continues to be the obvious one with Darren Eales leaving for Newcastle. Also, Darren Eales was kind of a overseer guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't just the GM, but Darren Eales was someone who came from the business world. Garth is more of a soccer guy, obviously. So I don't know if that's a perfect fit there. If he came to Chicago, maybe Garth Lagerwey is the better choice. If you get rid of Georg Heitz, maybe Garth Lagerwey is your Joe Mansueto soccer operations chief officer, guy who runs everything, and then he hires a sporting director / GM for the Fire. That's kind of my dream scenario personally. I, again, do not think it's going to happen, but again, Brinks truck, Garth Lagerwey's house, give him whatever he wants.
There is nobody better on the planet at manipulating MLS rules to their benefit. There's nobody better on the planet than picking guys who, for a lower amount of money, will work really well within a system than Garth. You know, he's from Elmhurst. I don't know how much he really cares about coming back home, but he is.
Hey, I was married in Elmhurst.
You know what?
Shout out to the Elmhurst Art Museum.
Elmhurst.
Gonna watch Elmhurst University's football team lose by a lot of points this weekend. But
Elmhurst College, I believe.
Now University, recently changed.
Oh, hey, who knew? All right.
Anyway.
You know, he's the guy that we would both want, and it feels sort of like, would he want to come here in a lateral move? It might be a lot more money, but it might be a lateral move. Is he actually interested in the challenge of turning this
Fire around
into something, which who knows? Do you give him a president's role, and what does that mean for Ishwara, who just got here? Do you make him the overseer of everything? Is he actually interested in caring about a Lugano or somewhere else in the world? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what Garth wants.
Any of those questions, and we should say we don't know that he's signed an extension because nothing's been announced in Seattle. We also don't think that Georg Heitz has signed an extension, but nothing's been announced here. From what we could tell, it was a 3-year deal that is up at the end of this season. But, you know, like with the Brian Gutierrez deal that was announced yesterday, sometimes the Fire will have people sign these, and then weeks later they'll announce
I
them.
think dominoes falling is the missing of the playoffs.
Yeah, but I mean, if
the Fire are out, so some dominoes fall now. If and when Seattle is officially eliminated, then I think you will start to see maybe more rumors about if Lagerwey is staying or not.
Yeah.
As long as the Sounders are chasing that playoff berth, there's no point if you're anybody in the Seattle organization and even really discussing it right now. Because if you haven't solved it yet, if he hasn't signed an extension, talking about it now versus talking about it a month from now isn't going to matter.
And obviously they would want him to stay, I would think, after all he's done. Like, I don't think, yes, they're going to be disappointed that they missed the playoffs, but they won the CONCACAF Champions League. They've made the playoffs every other year. They had unusual injuries this year. I can't imagine that, you know, Seattle's going, Garth, get out of here. You missed the playoffs once. You know, like, we would kill for that here. We'd kill for that. And, you know, so it's going to be interesting. I would think that if Heitz has signed an extension, and again, we don't know that he has, but if he has, that's going to be a nightmare for the PR people to try to explain that when we've called for his sacking, when Brian Sandalo at the Sun-Times has. Basically, the people that cover this team have called for his firing, and if you're going to be Joe Mansueto and bring him back, you're putting your PR people in a really difficult position to come up with the story as to why, or maybe they just announce it on a Friday news dump right before Christmas or something. I don't know.
And this is a reminder again, it's become kind of cliche these days, but a reminder, the social media person does not make the decisions.
Yes.
The comms team does not make the decision. The video production department does not make these decisions. Please do not go after them if the Fire do things you do not like.
The person who does the Fire's social media, Gretchen, is hilarious. And
got into a bit of a beef with the Philadelphia Union, which, I mean, the Union also have the soccer to currently back up generally their points, but it was good content. It was good banter. We like the banter.
She's good at that.
Who doesn't love bants? Love the bants.
Love the bants. So a couple other, if Garth Lagerwey doesn't come to the Fire, and if you're the Fire and you're looking for just kind of a straight up general manager, sporting director, kind of right in that role, staying with the Atlanta theme, there is questions about, with Darren Eales leaving, will there be more change? That could include former U.S. men's national team defender and Fire defender Carlos Bocanegra, who is currently Atlanta United's technical director. There has been some heat on him for a while because Atlanta have not been playing up to standard. Man, you think the Fire's high-profile signings aren't cashing in on their return on investment. Holy hell, Atlanta. Thiago Almada is very talented, has a bit of the, I think, doesn't think he should be here vibe, and honestly, I think he's right. I'm not quite sure why he came to MLS from Argentina. He probably could have skipped this step, but Joseph Martinez has not been playing well, has been getting into bust-ups with the manager. You've got Miles Robinson out for the year, so that's got to be a piece of it from that injury perspective, but they've just had a lot of high-profile signings that have not worked there.
Yeah, that's
and
a
you
red
do
flag.
wonder if simply a change of scenery would improve Bocanegra's track record on club with an owner with lots of money to spend, willing to go out and make big splashes. But neither club has exactly had a high success rate there. So even though Bocanegra's got the local tie-in, I'm not sure that would make a lot of sense.
Okay, if it's a decision between Bocanegra or Heights, I'd be willing to gamble and take Bocanegra.
I'm willing to try the other thing.
If it's a Heights is gone and we're going to have to bring in somebody new, I would give him a chance, but I think there's people that might be better. But he's, he had a track record of success before it all fell apart. So, in this league, which is something important, I think.
Yeah, Pat. The one other name you have down is Ned Grabovoy, who is a Chicago area native. He's Portland's technical director. Another team that, for non-soccer reasons and arguably not even non-MLS reasons, could be seeing some shuffling in the not-too-distant future at their general manager is Gavin Wilkinson, who it's kind of well-known has been under investigation by the NWSL, was part of an MLS investigation with Andy Polo, is going to be one of the subjects of a report coming out soon by Sally Yates about misconduct in the National Women's Soccer League. So Portland also a little uncertain exactly what their structure is going to look like in 2023. Grabovoy maybe stands to be someone who could get a promotion there, or if maybe someone new comes into Portland, again, maybe he's in a position where he is looking to go somewhere else because, a new boss wants their own people. But again, a Chicago area connection, someone who knows the league well. Portland more on the Seattle side of having been a bit more of a budget team that has had success by playing the market of MLS well, rather than the Atlanta strategy of just throw money at things. So I think in terms of somebody who has done it at a slightly lower level than being the boss, who might merit a promotion, I think Grabovoy is more in that category of guys looking to get their first crack as the full general manager, sporting director, etc.
Whoever it is, if indeed they are going to go down this road, I think it has to be someone, it doesn't have to be an American, but it has to be someone with experience in this league. Yeah. Heights came in because the headhunter found him, right? And he had a track record at Basel of developing stars, which, that hasn't really worked here with the academy. The Academy's had obviously some players come in, but they were here before he was here.
Yeah, and the Academy's success is that. I mean, that's such a long-term thing.
Yeah,
and the Academy starting to pay off now is a result of decisions that were made 6-7 years ago to kind of start back in the Nelson Rodriguez era to start increasing the investment and the focus on the Academy, and then Mansueto's money has kind of supercharged it, hopefully, into becoming one of the best in the league within a few years. That's Heitz independent.
Right, and Heitz just made the call to move Cedric Catenois to a scouting role, which some people on Twitter thought was a promotion. No, that's him seeing out the rest of his contract because they wanted to do something different with the Academy. So they can spin it however they want, but that's not what it was. He's obviously still making big decisions, and he's been very involved in things. He gave an extension to Guti. It was announced yesterday. Apparently, he also at the season ticket holder event announced that Federico Navarro will get an extension. He's still making decisions. It doesn't look like he's going anywhere to me. I don't know why you would, if you thought you were going to fire him, let him continue to make big decisions. So I think Heitz sticks around. So I think all of this whole conversation that we're having
is probably moot.
It's probably moot.
Because the thing and I've mentioned this I think before in the abstract that I would like to see is look at what Cincinnati did. Cincinnati said we have screwed this up badly. We are in a bad spot. We do not like where we have gotten ourselves. Who is a team in MLS that we would like to emulate and how they do things? And Cincinnati said Philly. We like what Philly is doing. We generally like all of that. So what did they do? They went and hired their number 2. They hired the top assistant coach, and they hired, well, I guess in the other order, they hired the assistant GM, who then hired the top assistant from Philly. And it doesn't always work this easily, but they have put a cohesive strategy in place. Everybody is on the same page, and they even with a lot of the players signed by the previous regime who were signed for maybe not good reasons or who had not been good before are coming good now and finding new lives. Look at Brenner.
I know.
Brenner looked like the biggest bust in the world last year in Cincinnati. Suddenly you play him in a strike partnership with Brandon Vasquez and Lucho Acosta in behind, and he looks like he might be worth all that money they paid.
Yeah. There's hope.
You guys are making me sad. I've now changed the lower graphic twice in the show. First it was should
why
Georg
won't
Heitz
he go?
Then it was will. Now it's why won't he? You're making me sad.
The owner seems to like him a lot. To segue to the next segment, actually, Pat, a similar question. Why won't Georg Heitz go? Why does Ricardo Pepi still keep getting called into the U.S. men's national team?
Oh, my God.
And I think the psychology might be similar. But before we get that, speaking of the U.S. men's national team, it is time for the PointsBet pick of the week. They take on Japan on Friday morning, Saudi Arabia on Tuesday of next week.
I believe that's right.
These are the final warm-up games before the World Cup in November, and they are maybe even more important because unlike with the Summer World Cup where you will have a 3 or 4 week camp where you'll play a couple behind closed door friendlies, get a lot of data, the guys will have played a game in Europe, go to Qatar, and basically the next weekend play Wales. Because they are in Group B, they are one of the teams playing on, I guess, now the second day of the tournament because they moved the Qatar versus Ecuador game to the night before, which was customary, and for some reason they just didn't do because this World Cup is a total shit show. But anyway, there's not going to be a lot of a break, so these games are important. Japan being the stronger opponent, Pat, and the first game, we expect Greg Berhalter to roll out a pretty strong lineup in Game 1.
Yeah, I think this will look a lot like what they'll go with in
barring
Qatar.
the injuries, of course. There are a few injuries notable.
Hopefully Tim Weah is back.
Tim Weah, Anthony Robinson, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But we were looking at goal scorer props. Christian Pulisic, anytime goal scorer, plus 290 on points.
I like that.
Against Japan. He is generally the penalty taker for this U.S. team. He figures to play a lot of minutes in this game.
He's got to, right?
So I think, we kind of debated who we wanted to go with here. We thought about the strikers, but we don't know who's going to start at striker. Pulisic is going to start this game. He's had a good track record these last couple of years in these friendlies in Europe against random teams that just seem to be for the sake of friendlies. They're not competitive. So he seems to do decently in these games. So that's what we're going with as the pick of the week. Christian Pulisic plus 290 to score against Japan. Before we talk more, though, Pat, about the U.S. in this international break, we do have some Fire international break notes. They do have a few guys who will be taking part with their international teams, and I think the headline here is going to be that John Duran got his first full international call-up to Colombia. I was expecting a bit of a big to-do about that from the Fire, from like a social perspective, from a push, but 24 hours went by after Colombia had posted the roster, and there was nothing on any Fire channels, and then eventually
it was weird.
Duran just got lumped into the same graphic that made it look like Chris Brady, Sergio Orejel, and Brian Gutierrez got called up to the senior national team. So I'm not sure why a bigger deal was not made about that. Again, we don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. I imagine there's likely a reason for this, but John Duran going to camp and getting to learn from the likes of Radamel Falcao, Rafael Santos Borré, alongside other exciting attackers like Luis Diaz from Liverpool, Luis Sinisterra from Leeds. Like, this is a really big opportunity for John Duran in the final window before a World Cup. The fact that he is getting this call in this window tells you that Colombia thinks there's a chance that he could have an outside shot at the 26-man roster for Qatar, which is
I don't think
crazy.
Colombia's in the World Cup, are they?
Are they not?
Huh?
I don't think they
qualify?
are.
Colombia? Not in the cup?
Oh, yeah. Did they just have a terrible campaign, in which case this would make a lot more sense? Oh, boy. Whoops. I might need the loser game show sound there,
wait.
Lawrence.
Hold on. Wait for it.
Anyway, my bad. So John Duran, then I should say one for the future for Colombia. Cool opportunity for him. And good to see him being rewarded. And again, with certain countries in Europe, international appearances make it easier for you to sign in certain places. That's
sure.
something,
Very good point.
Something to watch for here. International call-ups, international appearances can matter in your eligibility for certain transfers.
Well, we don't want that then, do we?
The other ones are Shaq's obviously going to play for Switzerland. He'll come back injured for the Fire. If track record holds there, Miguel's going to get a shot with Venezuela again.
Also not going to the World Cup.
And then Chris Brady and Guti are going to go play for the US U20s, and Sergio Orejel is going to play for the US U19s.
Yeah, it seems like they've got the full complement of all the age group teams for the U.S. Given that there's no competitive fixtures in the near future, this is a chance for the youth programs just to get as many guys in as possible, get a look at a whole lot of players. I mean, you've got a guy like Brady who's very much cemented as whatever the youth team is, like the highest youth team below the national team, he's going to probably be the goalkeeper there. Maybe Gaga has something to say about that when we get to the Olympics in 2024, because, again, they will both still be eligible because they are 18 years old, which still feels crazy. So, yeah, Brady will start in any friendlies or anything the U20s are playing. Would be good to see Guti get a chance. He's been playing well enough lately. Sergio Orejel continues to be a guy that the Fire Academy thinks very highly of, the U.S. Youth Program thinks very highly of, and he can't get anywhere near minutes for the first team for the Fire.
Yeah, I kind of thought that maybe we would see him get some minutes in center mid with the recent, there was a red card or a yellow card suspension and injuries, and Mauricio Pineda was sick, and I thought, well, maybe we'll see him, but I don't know that they think he's ready yet. And I said this on one of my pieces that I wrote recently. You have to figure that, he's training with the first team. Ezra sees him every day. And the fact that Ezra thinks that Jonathan Bornstein playing out of position in center mid is a better option to go win a game in Montreal.
That Orejel or Casas.
Yeah, tells you. And then Wiki had the same feeling about Casas. He didn't play a lot under Wiki. And, there was some moments, but he didn't get a ton of time. And I remember questioning Wiki about Casas once too, and he also didn't think he was ready. So it's, of the recent homegrowns, we've had complete busts like Alan Rodriguez, who barely plays for Fire too. But it seems like Casas, and Orejel came later, but it seems like Casas is kind of in a limbo, right? Like he gets minutes. We've seen him play, but not a ton. Orejel, they just haven't yet. So
yeah, and you do wonder if you're those guys, how you evaluate your future. We've seen a handful of MLS players take I don't love these moves personally, but we have seen guys go to lower levels in Europe, whether it's, lower division Belgian teams, lower Dutch teams. We've seen guys go off in search of just minutes.
Yeah.
And again, I don't like those moves generally. I think, you should be playing trying to play at the highest level you can start at, but not going down, basically. Like, fight for your place. But you could understand if some of these guys, if we go in the middle of next year, say we get to the summer transfer window next summer, and these kids still aren't getting any looks, whether it's Ezra or someone else running the show, at some point you would understand if they started to look at other options, whether that's USL, whether that's other MLS teams, whether it's Europe, wherever it is, because, you know, if these guys want to back themselves and they're not getting any minutes, you got to do what you got to do.
I haven't talked to Ezra about this, but I remember talking to Wiki about this at length, and he was very concerned that he's like, you have to pick the right kind of game to give a kid their debut.
Because you don't want to crush them.
He was very concerned about it. He's like, if we're getting killed, I'm not putting him out there. And if it's a tight game, I'm not putting him out there. He basically wanted to, if we're up 3-0, I'll get you some minutes. I'll give you 20 minutes, right? The Fire are rarely ever up 3-0. And I wonder if Ezra doesn't feel the same way, but I have not talked to him about it.
Yeah, the Fire aren't exactly a team that plays in a lot of up multiple goal games, and when they do, they tend to blow that lead and lose in stoppage time. Anyway, back to the U.S.
Little U.S., yeah, let's talk a little U.S.
So Japan, Saudi Arabia, lot of chopping and changing with these rosters, Pat. We've got Tim Weah, Anthony Robinson. Miles Robinson has obviously been out basically the whole year.
Yeah.
Cameron Carter-Vickers and Chris Richards also pulling out late of this camp with Knox. Zach Steffen was reportedly, we were told he was injured, but then he played for Middlesbrough yesterday. So that's maybe just a old-time Greg Berhalter favorite, and Steffen getting fully dropped from a squad. Gaga does not make it. Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, Sean Johnson are your goalkeepers. Don't be surprised if that is the group in Qatar. There is going to be a camp in October for MLS players whose teams did not make the playoffs. That's partially why these youth camps for these Fire guys are important this coming window, because U.S. Soccer is just going to call in a whole bunch of random dudes into that October camp. I mean, you're going to have some obvious choices. Gaga for the Fire, maybe Brian Gutierrez from the Fire. Eric Williamson from Portland is a guy who's going to be there. You know, if you think of profile, if Seattle ends up missing the playoffs, the Seattle guys will go. So those type of guys are going to be there. But then you've got to have enough dudes around to play 11 on 11 and actually try to learn anything. So that's something to definitely watch out for. But for this camp, I mean, we've got all those injuries. The biggest omission seems to probably be the combo of Jordan Pefok, who was scoring goals for Union Berlin at the top of the Bundesliga.
I don't understand that one.
I don't get it. I mean, you could read Greg Berhalter's comments to mean we know what Pefok gives us. We don't really need to see him, which could make sense because Pefok does not fit the way Berhalter wants to play. And the only way Pefok's going to play at the World Cup is we are losing late. We need a goal. Throw the big dude out there and see if he can do something.
For a national team that is baffled at who the 9 might be, to have a guy with 3 goals and 3 assists in one of the top leagues in the world.
For a team that is top of the table in Germany. Now, we should also say basically every individual on that team and the entire team is overperforming their underlying numbers by a hilarious amount. Like, Union Berlin is we are waiting for the other shoe to drop situation. Like, they should not be this good, and yet they are, and Bayern Munich continue to stumble, so Union get to be top of the league.
I've never seen a team outperforming their XG like Union Berlin is right now. It's insane.
But that goal that Pefok scored at the weekend, that glancing header, that is kind of a repeatable thing. Like, that is a skill we don't really see from the other U.S. strikers. Josh Sargent did score a header on a set piece last week. So if of the guys called in, Jesus Ferreira from Dallas, Josh Sargent from Norwich, Ricardo Pepi now of Groningen in the Netherlands on loan from Augsburg, where he did score a header in his first start. So hopefully that kind of rekindles his form. But yeah, it's kind of inexplicable, and it's kind of my main complaint about, not Berhalter, but my national team coach's thing in general, which is your job is to take the best players you have and get the best out of them. Your job is not to decide this is our system no matter what, independent of the players, and then make them fit it, I guess would be my point.
I could see that.
Brandon Vasquez from Cincinnati also does not get in despite all the goals he's scoring. I think you can debate that one a little bit more. If it was him or Pefok, I think you got to go with Pefok just because he's been in the camp before and again is doing it at a bit of a higher level. So that's going to be interesting to see. Gio Reyna is healthy. That's cool.
That's a very good thing.
Yunus Musa is not. That sucks because I think he's going to be our breakout star at the World Cup, and you want guys to get minutes. But I guess I've been blabbering a lot here. What are you – I assume we're both going to watch both of these games against Japan and Saudi Arabia. What are you looking forward to? What do you want to see?
I think that, number one, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yes,
number two,
priority number one.
I want to see how, in particular, the midfield and attack work as a unit and how Greg actually throws them out there. I want to see if the team has resilience, because the games don't count, but they do kind of count because this is your chance to go into the World Cup with the little bit of momentum that you can, right? And I want to see a team that is resilient if they go down a goal, particularly to Japan. I don't think that Saudi Arabia will give them much trouble, but I don't know. I think that just getting a glimpse of what might be the plan in Qatar is for me what I'm most interested in. And I also normally international breaks annoy me because it breaks the flow of the club season, but I'm done with I need a mental break from the fire at this point. And so it only really makes me sad from an Arsenal standpoint that the Premier League is off at the moment. But, I'm more excited about this international break than I have been in a while, and I hope the boys, put on good performances.
Erling Haaland in the Premier League gets a chance to recharge his literal batteries because Norway isn't going to the World Cup, so he doesn't have anything to care
I know
about
it's
right
two
now.
players, but how do you miss the World Cup with Haaland and Odegaard on your...
It doesn't really make any sense. Have I said this? I've said this on the show. I think Norway are to international men's soccer as the Angels are to Major League Baseball. And you just have two just ridiculous generational
That
talents.
is awesome.
How bad? No, and I mean no offense to the rest of Norway's international players.
But also
I'm sure many of you are very good at soccer. How bad are all of you that these two dudes aren't enough to get you anywhere? Same with the Angels. How bad does literally every other baseball player on the Angels have to be that Ohtani and Trout aren't enough? It's just unreal. So I have to assume that eventually Haaland will single-handedly drag Norway to a World Cup. I saw an interesting question posed on Twitter the other day, which was, how many goals does Erling Haaland have to score with not going to the World Cup to win the Ballon d'Or next year? Like, how many goals would it take in the season?
I mean, he's well on his way to whatever the hell that number
The basic argument was he'd have to win the Champions League and, be the reason City won the Champions League, but also score, 50 goals in all comps, and then maybe that's enough, because in World Cup years, the Ballon d'Or tends to just go to whoever the best player at the World Cup is.
Yeah.
Maybe that will also change, though, because we have a Winter World Cup, and the Ballon d'Or is awarded at a different time. Who the hell knows? But, yeah, these games will be interesting. I'm excited to see Gio Reyna. I want to see Gio Reyna in midfield. With Musa not there and the fact that Johnny Cardoso, who plays down in Brazil, he's much more of a defensive midfielder, more of a six, was called in as his replacement. That indicates to me that we're going to see more of what we saw in the Morocco game in Cincinnati, which was the U.S. very much playing with a double pivot in possession, which at that time was Yunus Musa dropping deeper to sit alongside Tyler Adams. My guess is we will see Weston McKennie asked to play that role, although it's very different from what he does for Juventus. Though maybe that's a good thing because Juventus suck right now. And so that will give the freedom for someone like Aronson or Reyna to have more of a free role. Maybe I want to see Reyna, Aronson, Pulisic, Adams, and McKennie all on the field together at the same time, just because it would be fun.
It will be fun.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Friday morning, 8:15 Eastern, I believe, is the kickoff of USA against Japan. That's the more soccer interesting game of the two.
Yeah.
The Saudi Arabia match, not only should we be a much better team than Saudi Arabia, I think that's the game, where you'll see Greg Berhalter do a lot more experimenting. You'll see some things we haven't seen before. You'll see him just try stuff because it's the last real opportunity to do so. Whereas Japan, I think, will more be who's the best team I can put on the field right now? Let's try to win this game. Saudi Arabia game, that's not going to be the objective in my mind.
I could see that. Yep.
Still, though,
Excited to see it happen.
we can hold out hope that we're going to get a Fire representative at the World Cup. That seems unlikely, although Greg did not say no to the idea of Gaga Slonina maybe sneaking his way onto the World Cup roster.
But if he does, he'll be listed as Gaga Slonina, Chelsea FC.
Yeesh.
So
Indeed he will. Yes, that does become maybe the next big storyline. Is Gaga back next year? We don't know, but with the Fire eliminated from the playoffs, that conversation can really begin in earnest. So here on the CHGO Fire Podcast, we will keep preparing for that Fire off season. They do have a couple more games. We will be back next week, but perhaps we do mix in more and more U.S. men's national team talk, more and more other things to distract ourselves from how bad the Fire are, because we can
I
only
just
talk
realized I forgot
so
to show off
much
this graphic.
about this terrible team as we close out with the graphic.
what a graphic.
The Fire are out.
Sorry,
Toronto, though, are Toronto a bigger failure than the Fire? They're also out.
Very bad.
Very bad. Another team spent a bunch of money, didn't work. Although they have been more entertaining because their offense is great, their defense is terrible. DC's got some other issues to handle off the field right now, despite, aside from being bad at soccer. New England also dead, so that decision day game in Bridgeview gonna be a real barnstormer of a game between two teams who probably just don't want to be there at that point. Yeah, so that's the state of things. Miami wins. Columbus gets a draw. We didn't mention that, Pat. Even if the Fire had held on against Charlotte, they would have been eliminated this weekend by that combo anyway. Miami. Gonzalo Higuain scored again.
Hey,
Scored
Higuain.
another winner. Yeah, hey, no more SIGs. For now, at least.
He's still smoking, no?
I think, allegedly.
Hey, I just want to bring something up real quick because I apologize. Our comments are not actually showing up, but we did get a question from Joaquin that I wanted to ask you guys. He said, what are some realistic roster moves the Fire should make going into next season? I'd love if they move on from Casper and Shaq, but what is actually possible that will help the roster?
Moving on from Casper's possible. That's a really easy one to just say, we're not picking up that option. Sorry, this didn't work out, whatever. I remain team ships Shaq to Switzerland. If you can do it.
Yeah, at some point, Lugano fans are going to revolt if they realize that Lugano is becoming a dumping ground for Georg Heitz's bad MLS decisions. But
Jordan Shaqiri
might be a different story.
Shaqiri might work.
Yeah.
Jordan Shaqiri right after World Cup coming home to play in Switzerland. I think they
might be excited.
They might go for that.
Yeah.
Gaston, as we've talked about, is not movable because of that injury. If he had stayed healthy, I think the Fire would have taken any amount of cash anyone would have offered, and that would have been that. But that's not going to happen.
I think all the DPs are back next year. I don't know about Casper as one of the
I
guys,
think a realistic thing to think about is, can you get a veteran MLS 9, again, somebody with Casper's profile, but not Casper,
I know
basically.
for a fact they looked at Kai Kamara. Ezra has ties to Kai.
Go get Corey Burke from Philly so he can stop scoring against the Fire every time he plays us. Do that. Corey Burke to the Fire. Make it happen, just for the memes. On that note, he's Pat. I'm Alex. We will see you next week to talk about this terrible soccer team.